Long life, hello everyone, we live happily ever after. Today I invite you to talk about what is happening neither outside nor around us, but inside us. Believe me, the changes are no less global than those that we observe around us. And they happen regardless of our desire, happen to all of us, just to everyone at completely different levels. And that's what I propose to talk about. So, about a month ago, the Academy of Sciences of the Russian Federation made an official statement. An official statement, note, the beginning of a positive planetary mutation of mankind and the birth of the sixth new race of people at the cellular level. Thus, we're right here and now are changing. So, about 120 scientific discoveries were worked out, which were divided into contingently 3 blocks. The first block is all that we know about God. I emphasize, we do not just know, but what is confirmed by fundamental science. The second block of knowledge and discoveries is all discoveries about physiology, including a mutation at the DNA level of humanity, which we will talk about a little later. And the third is about the new world that is born as a result of this. These 3 blocks we will discuss today. I will not overload you with the information, we will discuss it from the point of view of fundamental science, because we are all used to the fact that when it is scientific, it's right, it's great. When it's philosophy, it's wrong. But now everything is changing and we will begin to understand this over time, but nonetheless, we will begin to discuss this from the point of view of fundamental science. So all this knowledge, unfortunately, you will not find directly in the public domain. Of course, all this certainly exists, all this is mainly collected in academic journals, but the scientific community, and not only, believe that it's probably not worth discussing now, because it will even more scare the already terrified population of the Earth. Well, we all understand what this is about. So we begin with the fact that many of you know, and even if you don't know, we feel the changes that are happening inside us now. Many religions warned about it, they talked about it, there were whole treatises on the subject written, and so on and so forth. All discoveries are generally a combination of scientific and metaphysical knowledge, and at this junction we see the birth of completely new science, neurotheology. Our brain feels several realities, and the metaphysical reality is as real as the physical reality that is happening here and now. Physics has officially recognized the existence of Supermind. At one time, academician Vernadsky formulated the concept of the noosphere. This is where all scientific discoveries come from, including everything else. It is from there that all this comes to us. So what is Supermind? Is it God, a single field of consciousness, long-range action, or instantaneous transmission of information? Albert Einstein, in his time, called the instant transmission of information terrible long-range. Why? Because any quantum particle changes another particle instantly at a distance of many tens of light years. In 2015, most recently, Dutch scientists proved this, forcing all physicists in the world to reconsider their views. Why? Because before that, the speed of light was considered unshakable by such a prevailing standard of speed, 300,000 kilometers per second. Thus, the Dutch physicists proved that this is not so, that this is not an unshakable speed, not an absolute speed. At one time, our compatriot, the most talented scientist Nikolai Kozyrev, with his experiments, which he conducted quite correctly, and they were repeated many times, also discovered and proved long-range action. In his experiments, he proved that the signal exceeds the speed of light by a billion of times, which in general is denied by fundamental science. Our other compatriot, Nikolai Dmitrievich Kolpakov, professor of Kharkov University, discovered polarizing waves or ether in 1996. Of course, the ether was open before it. We remember all such great scientists as Mendeleev. We know the table of periodic elements of Mendeleev. So in due time, Mendeleev, when he opened his table, and I think he is also got it from this universal field of reason, the noosphere, it can't be called differently. He just really wanted it, worked on it a lot and got this knowledge accordingly. So in the main place, in the first place, he had an element which then disappeared from this table. It was just ether. And the discovery of the ether and the explanation of the nature of the ether Dmitry Ivanovich Mendeleev considered the main business of his life. Also the second scientist, whom we all remember, Nikola Tesla, whose inventions we owe even now, who was hundreds of years ahead of his time, he worked with ether, transmitted energy at a distance without wires, and so on. Let's just say that humanity was not ready for his discoveries. Morgan, who financed him when he realized what he was facing, destroyed all these discoveries, everything connected with the ether. He said, "Unfortunately, we cannot put a counter here. As a result of this, mankind has taken the path of burning minerals, causing irreparable harm to our planet. And we have what we have now." Well, what are polarization waves? There is no absolute void anywhere, neither in space, nor around you and me, and the so-called emptiness. It is filled with subtle polarizing matter. What is the speed of light? Let's say it's completely different, this speed of light, in the nucleus of any atom. Take an average. The speed is 12 meters per second, more or less. But in a thinner world with high vibrations, this speed can reach 10 to the 20th power. And this information is transmitted by these waves instantly, regardless of distance. Thus, it doesn't matter what distance between us. These waves, including those coming from us, from the man himself, they have shown a single field of consciousness. Therefore, they say among the people that a sage with his consciousness can embrace the whole universe. This also explains telepathy, the telepathic transmission of information that comes instantly, regardless of where people are on the globe. Therefore, the nature of this energy is one and the same. If a person wants to overcome the gates to the spiritual worlds, then the first and the most important condition, he must bring himself into a state of internal balance. This balance is physical, emotional, mental and spiritual. This is a necessary condition for the harmonious flow of this energy. So until we bring ourselves to a state of internal balance, harmony, they call it differently. They call it our spiritual growth, the raising of our vibrations. This has different concepts. We will not come closer to these spiritual gates where we will receive unlimited information, access to databases of unlimited information, again according to our vibrations. Anyway, each person has a completely unique spectrum of these polarizing waves. It is unique to each person, just like a fingerprint, it's also proven. It's because this happens because our brain works on these waves. In 1997, a monograph by Professor Najib Valitov was published in the scientific community. This monograph sounds like this: vacuum vibrations during the chemical excitation of atoms, of molecules, and randomly thin lines of electromagnetic and force fields. But what can this tell you and me? Yes, nothing, just a set of some words. But this monograph is published in an academic publication and produces a shock in the scientific community. So what did this man do and discover? So what did he do? And everything is very simple. He proved the existence of God in the strict language of formulas, mathematical formulas. He proved that any objects in the universe interact with each other instantly, regardless of the distance between them. Our thoughts are also material. The process of thinking emits and absorbs radiation of electromagnetic fields. In other words, what we are made of is how we sound. That's why it's very important, especially now, in a period when the vibrations of the Earth and our vibrations increase. These changes occur instantly, and it's very important to think before you think. If before you had to think before you do something, now before you think, you need to think, because we are changing the reality around us instantly in the current new vibrations. In other words, what we think about is what we sound about, and this process can be detected from anywhere in the universe. There is power to which absolutely everything around us is subordinated, both in our world and in space and in the universe and in other worlds. We call this power differently: God, Allah, the Creator, the universe, nature, it doesn't matter. Next, the discovery of the Higgs boson follows. When the Higgs boson was discovered, a group of scientists received a Nobel Prize for this. What is the Higgs boson? This is the first brick in the mother of God. Thus, it is also present in our organics. And here we come to the understanding of the observer. What is it? This means that the observer and the observed, the one who does something, are one and the same. The observer is always an active process, he is not passive. So, behind our attention, where we look, energy flows there. Where I look, there is my energy. Our consciousness, like gravity and magnetism, is quantum energy. This is the fabric of the existence of life. There are two root discoveries of the last century. The first discovery, it sounds like this: consciousness is controlled with the matter. The second discovery is the root discoveries that turned physics around, that all matter is made up of light. So it follows quite logically from this that consciousness is light. Now we answer the question: what is physics? Physics, translated from Greek physis, means the essence of things. It is the queen of all sciences. But, while in physics there is no concept or section of the spirituality of physics, but physics, like a queen, combines all knowledge and multidimensional or quantum physics, which is now actively developing. This is the core of reality or spirituality, no matter how strange it may seem. Going beyond the usual framework, we see the dynamics in everything. And Observing these dynamics, we come to the concept of spirituality. So these dynamics, it is not only around us. The ancient sages said that you cannot enter the same river twice. The reality around us is constantly changing, it's already different. The same dynamic happens inside our bodies. And modern science, modern medicine, all thinking people and those who move this science forward, they understand that this is the concept of static, which we observe on the basis of stupid analyses that we take, and we are completely different through some time. When we come to the doctor, he simply looks at the analysis without even looking at us, prescribes us some useless medicines, useless prescriptions, all this a thing of the past. Because dynamics, quantumness, multidimensionality begin to reign in everything. And we observe this multidimensionality primarily within ourselves. This multidimensionality is manifested in our DNA, and now we are approaching the most important discovery: what is actually happening inside us. And what is happening inside us, scientists would call it just some mysticism. And they call it mysticism because our DNA suddenly began to evolve. What seemed to be absolutely unshakable, predetermined from the beginning, suddenly begin to change. We were born with a certain set of genetic disease, with a certain set of prescribed information that was encrypted in the DNA, and which we carried with us all our lives, and which was 100% considered unchanged. So now it suddenly began to change. So what happened? The breakthrough happened in April 2018. Australian scientists proved and showed the presence of nodal DNA, which began to reprogram the DNA itself. These nodal DNA, they were observed earlier. Back in the 80s, it was established in laboratory conditions that in an acidic environment, our DNA, imagine it in the form of such a rope, it could be tied in a knot. But from the fact that they learned there was practically no use for this, because there is no acidic environment inside the cell. And then, suddenly, in April 2018, Australian scientists proved and showed clearly the presence of these nodal DNAs and the creation of macromolecules. These nodular DNAs began to reprogram the DNA itself more precisely. They began to turn on or off with the help of certain genes, certain programs in our body, including the program, oddly enough, of our aging. This telomerase, which was responsible for our aging and all our diseases, suddenly began to change. The ends of the X chromosomes began to grow, about which we believed that they could only be shortened, and the shortening could be slowed down by the way of life and so on, but only slowed down or accelerated. So now it has begun to return to its previous levels. In science, it is simply considered some kind of mysticism. So what is the difference between a new DNA and an old DNA? The old DNA had 64 codons. Let's call it 64 codes, encryption of genetic information. So in the new DNA there are 81 codons, 17 more. The new DNA is a much higher vibrational structure that we can imagine. These nodes are formed at a late stage of cell development when genetic information in the cell is actively read. And now these nodal DNAs suddenly start to turn off certain genetic programs, our genetic predisposition, something that all the scientists and doctors of the world told us from childhood suddenly stopped working. So with our, I emphasize, consciousness, the presence of our free will, we can turn on or turn off certain genetic diseases. Well, it's better to turn off, of course, which we carried with us all our lives. We can cancel the program of diseases. We can cancel the program of aging. We can activate unique functions in our DNA that were originally laid down in the architecture of our body, but we never used them. These unique opportunities were demonstrated to us by ascended teachers. We'll remember how Jesus Christ, with his intention, changed the structure of things, turned water into wine. The blind became sighted, and paralyzed people got up and walked. All this was. So, Jesus Christ is a classic example of a person who has activated the capabilities of the body at the level of physics, which any of us can now activate. But there is a small but. Remember, I said that we can overcome the gates to the spiritual worlds only by harmonizing our four internal bodies: emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual, and now bringing them into harmony, into a state of equilibrium with the help of special techniques, affirmations, and so on, which I will discuss later in the next releases. We can begin to consciously reprogram ourselves, our body. At the level of official science, it announced, and I also announce, imperceptibly from us, in addition to our desire, a positive mutation is in full swing, a positive one, I emphasize. Because in any case, even those people who are still sleeping, who are still flying in our famous salon, and have not woken up, even they have those changes necessary for their level of awareness, their level of vibrations at the level of the body's physics. So, why do we need this? This is necessary in order to proceed. Remember the third block of discoveries, this is the new world. The new world is the world of ascension. Previously, the ascension of transition was quantum, or was also called in different ways. It was possible only through the death of the physical body. Now, for the first time in the history of all previous civilizations, we will make this transition, I emphasize, without the death of our physical bodies, and through the updating of our physical bodies, rejuvenation, the inclusion of those features that were originally flashed in our bodies but never used. They were blocked at the genetic level. And now everything is possible. Now everything is unlocked. Now everything is in the field of our capabilities, our vibrations. So once again, I urge you, it is all possible if we vibrate at the frequencies of joy, love, awareness. When we turn off the programs of self-destruction, fear, insecurity, it's not ours. Go ahead, reprogramming. We all become programmers. I love and hug everyone. See you in the next releases.